Phantom Technology Solutions President Henry Timm joins this week to break down news from Sophos and Adigy and dig through the 2023 ChannelPro vendors on the Vanguard, plus a special guest interview with JS Group CEO Janet Schijns on getting better value from vendor relationships. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 257, Not in a Jail Cell. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode number 257. My name is Matt, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine show for folks out there like you. And if you're tuning in and you're wondering what kind of person would tune in to ChannelPro Weekly, is this the show for you? It really doesn't matter. This is a good show. We have a lot of fun. You're going to enjoy it, but you will find it particularly useful if you are something like a VAR, an MSP. And if you know what MSP stands for, then you're definitely in the right place. An IT integrator, IT consultant, if you're a system builder, if you're any of those things that has a job where you work with other companies implementing technology solutions, servicing computers, giving them digital security, all of that kind of stuff. If anything that sounds like what you do for a living, you are in the right place, and we are glad you are here because we've got a lot in the show that you're going to absolutely love. Joining me this week, most weeks, is the man of the hour, the guy who keeps the things running on time, making all kinds of cool posts on the website. Who is that person? He is the one and only executive editor, Rich Freeman. Welcome, Rich.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. And I'll just quickly say to anyone in the audience who does not fit into the categories you were talking about there, like, can't spell MSP, isn't part of the industry, but they've stumbled across this podcast. Stick around, please. Stick around. We're going to try to inspire you to get into this industry because it is really shorthanded right now. So if there's any chance whatsoever, we can talk you into becoming an MSP. Stay with us a little bit. Maybe this will inspire you.
Yeah, and maybe not start your own business, but we'll work for an MSP because they're all. Are they hiring? Yes. The answer is just yes. And that you can get your foot in the door, and it's a very, very good career. And Rich, I know we got some other stuff to talk about, but one of the people who does that exact thing is here with us. And we have an awesome guest host today. He is the president and CEO of Phantom Technology Solutions, a managed IT services provider based in Rolling Prairie, Indiana. Sounds nice. His passion for solving complex problems led to an extensive career working in IT, leadership, networking, support, software development positions over the last 15 years. He has been recognized for several honors and nominations, including the Michiana, I can pronounce that, Michiana. I'll have him tell me what that is. Under 40 list, and the Ernestine M. Racklin Community Leadership Award. All of these weird sounding names that I can't pronounce, but he's got awards from all of them. Please welcome the one and only Henry Timm. Welcome, Henry.
Thank you guys for having me.
Is it the Michiana or the Michiana?
Michiana. So it's you gotta love these regional things, but Michigan and Indiana combined there. So
oh, that's what I thought. It was like somebody's last name. I didn't realize it was the names of two states put together. Very, very interesting. So Tim, you are one of these things that we were talking about at the top of the show. I bet you're hiring.
Oh yes, absolutely. That's we've been looking like crazy here over the last, like everyone else, trying to find someone that's got the skill set and available for us. But I think we've added We've had 4 job offers go out in the last 2 weeks here.
Wow, there you go. Yeah, and everyone, I bet we could have any MSP from anywhere in the country on, and they would say something very similar to that as far as putting on staff right now, because they're all looking for staff. But we're going to learn a little bit about you in a minute. But Rich, I want to touch base on a couple things that we've got going on, because I know we're going to be talking about some other things throughout the show, but we've got an event coming up here in a couple weeks in Washington, D.C., and for those who are anywhere in that eastern seaboard area, I mean, that could touch New York, it could touch New Jersey, Baltimore. I mean, Washington, D.C. is very easy to get to from all of those places. What would people get if they came to that event? What would they see? Why should they go, Rich?
Why would people go to the ChannelPro SMB Forum event in Washington, D.C., just outside of Dulles Airport? Because we have a packed agenda filled with all sorts of amazing content for you that's going to send you home better armed to grow your business. We have a session that you are moderating, Matt, modeled after the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game show. Anyone out there who's sub 1 million a year, that you want to be a millionaire, you want to get beyond a million, keep growing from there. We have all sorts of great advice from very successful MSPs that we're going to present to you in a very fun, engaging game show format. We have another session that we are calling the MSP Automation Bake Off. Again, fun format. We've got 3 experts on RMM tools and PSA tools. They're going to talk to you about things you can do with tools you're probably already using to get more productivity out of them. And then at the end of the session, you get to decide who won the bake-off. And trust me when I tell you this, the bragging rights matter a lot to these people. I'm going to be moderating a session on building a cloud-first MSP, and we've actually injected a little fun into that. And modeling that session after the classic Unsolved Mysteries TV show. Is there any better unsolved mystery in the channel right now than being cloud-oriented and profiting handsomely from it? We've got some people who are going to tell you how to do that. So, and there's more than that. There's a hands-on website enhancement, makeover workshop that's going to be led by the amazing Kendra Lee. So you want to go to events.channelpronetwork.com. Still time to sign up. That's events in a couple of weeks. We hope to see you there. There are more events on the calendar. And after this one in March in Washington, D.C., the next event is in Chicago, your backyard, Matt. And off the air, I was talking with Henry, and not only is he planning to attend, he's bringing people with him.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Well, that will be awesome as well. Yeah, in case anybody else needs a little bit of encouragement too, I will say all that stuff that Rich said is absolutely true. Packed agenda, great information. You will walk away with all kinds of actionable stuff to do, but we also like to have a lot of fun. So if this helps, I have a money gun that we're going to be using. And Rich is going to be dressed in a trench coat, dressed like Robert Stack from Unsolved Mysteries. It's awesome. Like, you totally got to make it. And he gave you that link, events.channelpronetwork.com. Go there. Also give you one more link if you just want to fast track to registration. It's channelproforum.com/DC. And that'll take you right to the page where you can go and you can register and get all the information. Please, anywhere in the Eastern area, join us. Don't hesitate. Get signed up right away. If it comes out, you can come last minute. Just show up and register on site if you can. But don't miss it. It's going to be really good. You will get a lot out of it. And Henry knows. Henry's been parts of our events in the past as well. Henry, what would people expect from a Channel Pro Forum event?
I think you're going to get a good mixture of direct contact with vendors that you're going to be able to have those one-on-one conversations with them to vet both the new vendors as well as kind of foster those relationships with your existing vendors, work on any trouble pain points that you may have in that. But I think also the additional added education pieces of it are fantastic for people, especially someone that's looking to grow their business and try to identify areas that they can improve. There's always something we can improve on.
Absolutely. And great stuff. And folks, I didn't pay him to say that, but the check is in the mail anyway. So listen to Henry, make sure that you're there and make sure that you attend. And if you can't attend DC, we're going to be all over the country doing some other shows. And I think Rich said we're in Chicago. We're also we're going to be in San Jose. We're going to be all over the place. Sign up, get your ticket and go. And if you do sign up, use promo code CP Weekly. That will get you in the door for free, no cost to you, and because it's free to attend for anybody who listens to Channel Pro Weekly. So make sure you go. You'll get a lot out of it. Henry, I want to thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for the plug about the event. But for those who want to learn a little bit more about you, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and a little bit more about your business, Phantom Technology Solutions?
Sure. So I am the president of Phantom Technology Solutions, and we are based in northern Indiana. We are a security-focused MSP, and I consider us kind of a smaller MSP, but we try and punch above our belt there a little bit there. And we work primarily with compliance-driven clients. So that's really kind of where the sweet spot that we play in.
Compliance is a growing area of need for many customers. That's for sure, and it's a good thing to specialize in right now. So you said you've been in business for the last 15 years. How did you get started?
So actually, I started off not thinking I was going to go into technology at all. I was in school thinking I was going to go into medicine. Was working at a hospital and pitched some ideas at the time to their IT side, and one thing kind of led to another. I dropped out of college, and embraced the IT side of it, just because I enjoyed the pace and the variety, and the challenge that it presented itself. And went and worked for a distributor as their IT director for a while, before starting this. And really, starting Phantom for me was about trying to fix a lot of the things that I saw as issues of the existing providers in our area at the time, and kind of democratizing a lot of the technology I had previously worked with in the distributor and in healthcare, for some of the SMB clients out there.
So have you always been a services oriented business, or did you kind of start more in just to integration and solution integration and then kind of morph into managed services? How was that progression for you?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people, we started out in that break fix model, and we were hungry, so we would take a lot of things that in clients that we necessarily wouldn't take today. But as we kind of matured and gained experience over time, it made sense to make that transition. Like a lot of MSP stories, make that transition from break fixed over to managed services, and kind of lean into the security side of that and the cloud side of that, primarily as both it's a good monetary driver, but it's also just good for the clients. It's in their own interest, and we try and align ourselves as much as we can with their clients. So
very cool. So I always try to get a sense of like people's personality kind of by the backdrop that they choose. And yours is, I'm having a hard time picking up on anything on you. And folks, for those who are listening, he's got like a blank wall and a corner behind him. I got nothing to go with. So what kind of things do you do in Northern Indiana?
So I promise I'm not in a jail cell. This is a hotel room. There's a fair number of people that probably know me because they've seen me around at events throughout the channel. And I get asked frequently about why I'm at so many events, and why it's such a intentional decision to do it, because it does take time away from the organization that I can't be interacting on the day to day. But I think that there's a lot of benefit to be had by attending a lot of the industry events that are out there, both from a visibility standpoint with our vendor relationships, and some of it is just the humility and perspective aspect of it, because there's so many different ways to skin the cat, and learning from other people how they're doing it is, facing the same challenges but handling it differently. Of course, the educational side of it, I get to do some industry give back side of with that. The networking is amazing. It's just a ton of reasons. So today I'm actually at an event in Dallas, and I try and get around and hit as many as I can, just kind of maintain that visibility.
So you said you got into business because you saw lots of problems in your area, and what are so you look like you're trying to solve problems. What are the problems that you're seeing MSPs face today, and how are you addressing those?
Sure. So I think the biggest thing that's out there right now that's a challenge for MSPs is around the risk that they've been carrying for their clients without being compensated for it. And what I mean by that is that a fair amount of MSPs, and we're totally guilty of this, just accepted that we're going to not get our clients to buy into everything that we want them to, or listen to our advice on everything. And at the end of the day, we're left holding the bag, and that's becoming even more evident as cyber insurance, and some of these legal ramifications and regulation come down the pipeline, that we're holding that risk for our clients. And if we're not getting compensated for that, then why are we taking that gamble? So I think that's a huge risk out there for MSPs, but it's also a huge opportunity as well. So for us, we're going through trying to align ourselves with the security framework and implement that not just internally for us, but for all of our clients, and trying to do everything we can to help mitigate that risk, as well as addressing the cybersecurity insurance portion of that for our clients as well.
Very interesting. So, and outside of work, when you want to go unwind, what kind of things do you like to do outside of work? You got any hobbies or anything? Are you into skydiving, anything like that?
Yeah, actually, I have done a fair amount of skydiving. Had Drogue actually get tangled once, and that was a little brown pants inducing. But uh, yeah, in general, though, I spend a lot of time with my kids. I've got 4 and a 6-year-old boy and girl. And I also spend a fair amount of time playing music, play piano, sax, and drums, guitar, and a few other things. And it's just a great de-stressor for me to, kind of take my mind off of the day-to-day.
That's a lot of instruments. Any particular favorite or one that you're like the best on versus the others?
I gravitate towards piano. It's just, yeah, I've actually got one in my office so that if I get a break during the day and hopefully not bothering anyone else, I can, go unwind a little bit.
Very cool. And do you play like just for yourself, or do you actually like go out in like clubs and groups or play in a band?
Usually just play for myself, but if I'm out with a group and say we go to like a dueling piano place, it's not uncommon that I can get coaxed up there.
Neat. Now, Rich, I think you had something you wanted to ask him as well, right?
Yeah, no, well, and just a story, I guess I want you to tell, Henry. So you were on the cover of our magazine. Was it January or December?
December.
The December issue. And I remember waiting for the photograph, the cover photograph to come in so I could take a look at it. And I was curious. I told our managing editor, Colleen Fry, I was curious to see how the beard looked. Because for folks who are listening on audio right now, Henry has a very handsome beard. As long as I have known him, he has. But for a little while there, and it's back now in all its glory, but for a little while there, Henry, you did not have a beard. Tell folks a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there was a fundraising opportunity last year that Matt Lee and several others had organized. I believe there was 18 of us that participated in it, but we were able to raise over $200,000 back ended in November for charity, just by offering to shave our beards for that. And thank goodness mine has grown back for everyone's sake in a pretty good pace. So
neat. How long did it take you to grow? So for those who are watching, it is a magnificent beard, very nice. How long did that take to grow back?
For me, about a month.
That's really good. There's like a gene that exists in some human men that just allows them to grow magnificent beards. And some people just can't. Like Rich, I cannot grow a beard to save my life. I tried once and it was a disaster. Like I just don't, but like some people can just get big full ones. I got a friend named Eric who also has like awesome beard growing abilities. Henry, do you have to do anything is there like a trick to growing a good beard?
No, I think I do some, basic maintenance for it, but really just kind of lucky, I guess, depending on your viewpoint. But yeah, some of the beards that got shaved though, I mean, Jason Slagle and Matt Lee and some of the gentlemen had some tremendously long beards.
Yeah, and I guess when you go out really long, I know that those do take a while to get there. So, well, that's a cool fundraiser. What were they raising money for?
So it went to 5 main charities that were all kind of related to the IT industry. So like Hackers for Vets and Advancing Women in Technology type of organizations. But then at a certain point, we also got to personally select individual charities for the overage amount once we met our goal.
Awesome, man. Well, it sounds like it was a smashing success, and thanks for participating in that. Very cool. We've got a lot ahead, folks. I know we could talk about beards and stuff like that all day, but we will kind of plow forward because we got some really cool stuff that we're going to talk about. So one, we're going to be talking about Sophos. They're in the news. Adigy's in the news. We're going to be talking about something from them. We're going to be talking about the 2023 vendors on the Vanguard, something we talk about every year. Always a really interesting piece that we do to learn about some of the, well, Rich will tell you about it when we get there, so you're going to have to stay tuned to learn more about that. We got an awesome interview coming up. I've been waiting to have her on for months. Janet Schijns, the CEO of JS Group, is going to be joining us. It's going to be a awesome interview. Absolutely not one that you'll want to miss. And we got a whole lot more. Henry's going to be with us the whole show, and we're going to be talking to him about various stuff. So getting his take on these stories. It's going to be awesome. Strap in. Here we go. Rich, Sophos is shipping something. What are they shipping?
Well, they have, in fact, shipped a couple of new firewall products, and there is something in sort of notable about what unites these two particular products that is of interest to me, and I'm really interested to get Henry's perspective on this in particular. But let me just sort of set this up. So the model name, Sophos has an XGS line of firewalls. They have added 2 new models to that line. I don't know if these are now the top of the line models, but if they're not, they've got to be really close. They're called the XGS 7500 and the XGF 8500. And these are, by Sophos's own description, enterprise-grade products. They are for large businesses and for campus deployments. I mean, I can give you, I won't get into the specs in any depth here, but they can handle 58 million concurrent connections, up to, depending on which model you're talking about, up to 1.7 million new connections per second. Enormous throughput. Both of these models actually are equipped with the Extreme Flow processor, which is something that we talked about back in 2021 when it first came out. Since then, Sophos has been building this sort of secondary processor into its firewalls so that the primary CPU can kind of offload encryption, for example, and some of these other tasks, and enables the device to work much faster. So very powerful devices. I don't have pricing information on them, wasn't able to get that. What was interesting to me, Sophos came to me and said, hey, we're going to be announcing this in a day or two. Do you want to report on it? And I kind of wrote back, well, it doesn't really sound like these are appropriate products for our customers here. It's more of an enterprise play. And the response basically was, not so fast, Rich. This could be and I'm sort of characterizing what I was told by the executive I spoke with, a strategic resource for SMBs. Let me read a quote that we got from Dan Cole, who's Vice President of Product Management at Sophos. He said, these models are well suited for the recently upgraded post-pandemic SMB network, where remote workers, SaaS access, and IoT systems are ever more present. That basically, from Sophos's point of view, there is a story to be told around these extremely powerful firewalls that makes them relevant potentially to SMBs and SMB partners, particularly as SMB-oriented channel partners are maybe doing co-managed IT or moving up market to bigger clients and so on. That what might have been thought of before as something that isn't really relevant to a smaller partner, actually in some cases really could be. And that was, so, you know, any questions anyone has just about the devices, we can try to get into it. But I'm really curious to know what you think or thought, Henry, when you saw this article. Is this something you can imagine your company or your peers needing and taking advantage of?
Yeah, absolutely. So full disclosure, we're a Sophos partner. So fits right into our wheelhouse. But yeah, when we went through the COVID experience here, we did see that, of course, initial rush to increase the bandwidth for infrastructure or replace aging infrastructure to be able to support the remote work from home type scenarios and increase kind of the bandwidth. But the security aspect of that and the bandwidth demands have been huge drivers for clients. And that continues to be a need, and especially since we're kind of moving, as you said, kind of expanding into more and more commit situations. I can definitely see where something like this would play a role in that.
It seems like the extra processing power might help too, because when you start to get into those areas, and you start turning on things like encryption and deep packet inspection and all that stuff. A lot of SMB grade firewalls, and this might have has probably changed a little bit in recent years, but historically, these kinds of things would really start to slow down when you turn all that stuff on, which is kind of the stuff you need these days. So are you finding that like you need the kind of performance level that these switches have, or how are you managing all that kind of stuff today?
We take it by, client by client, but definitely in our larger organizations, we're definitely looking for bigger bandwidth fulfillment. But in general, yeah, we've pretty much replaced firewalls and switches across the board with most of our clients, even with migrating a lot of them to cloud, since I don't know the last time we sold a physical server, but you still have to move that data, and people are accessing and need dependability in that, and are relying on the speed of it. So as you said, yeah, that when you're sizing a firewall like this, you absolutely have to take into consideration not just the number of users, but and the type of data that they're utilizing, but what features and licenses you're going to have deployed on that firewall, because that will drastically still impact a lot of that. So that'll definitely help you choose your sizing on it.
Interesting. And so for folks who are listening, open up the description area on your phone, or go to the show sheet for episode 257 at channelpronetwork.com. And you can go and you can read this, because there's a lot more numbers in here about performance and stuff. And I love looking at firewalls and switches. It's just Ethernet ports and SFP ports, and they'll always look high tech and fun. Rich, anything else on this particular story that we want to mention or talk about?
No, I think we're good.
All right, so folks, go and check out, read more about those firewalls and see if they're of interest to you. But we are going to move on, because we're going to switch from firewalls to a report, but an interesting report. Rich, what is this report about?
I'm sure it's true of everyone in the tech media. I get a lot of reports. I get lots and lots of research studies sent to me in any typical week, and we don't wind up talking about the vast majority of them on this show. But here's one that landed in my inbox yesterday, as we're recording this now, that struck me as really interesting, and it's from a company called Addigy, ADDIGY. For people who are not familiar with them, they make RMM, MDM software specifically for the Apple environment, Macs and iOS, etc. And they have just published their 2023 State of the Apple Device Management Industry Report for MSPs. Bit of a mouthful. They went out to 480 MSPs worldwide and collected data. So here's sort of the good news here to set it up. They found, when they went out to MSPs, that the MSPs who do manage Apple devices in addition to Windows devices or Linux or whatever, they charge twice as much as MSPs that don't. And this is because it's a totally different platform. There are some unique complexities. If you have the know-how to handle that for a customer, you can charge more, and people will pay you more for that. 65% of the MSPs they talked to said that they expect the use of Apple devices within their end user clients to increase in the next 12 months. So the people who support Apple devices making twice as much use of Apple devices across the board. Even the people who aren't managing those devices, Apple devices, now say we're seeing more and more use of these products. We expect to see more in the next 12 months. And yet, there are a lot of people who aren't managing Apple devices on top of Windows devices, a lot of them. And that Addigy folks asked, why aren't you doing that? Number one reason, managing Mac OS devices is a pain in the apple, is how Addigy phrased it. 30% of the people who are in that "no, we don't do it" camp said that. The 28.3% said, I don't have an Apple expert on my team. So again, those unique complexities, lack of expertise is what's keeping people out of that market. But man, it sure sounds like there's some ROI out there, and again, we were talking before, it's not easy to find people, and finding people who have the skill set, or finding a tool that makes it so that you don't necessarily need very much. All of that isn't easy. But it does feel like there's probably money being left on the table by a lot of MSPs out there right now, just because they won't touch the Apple hardware.
So Apple computers cost like twice as much. Managing them costs twice as much, but you can make twice as much money managing them. So basically, the moral of the story is Apple stuff is expensive.
Well, I think though that the increase in adoption of iPhones and iPads and so forth, since there's even more data that's kind of going mobile, as it were, really kind of plays into the security aspect of this. So MSPs really do need to be looking at some type of MDM solution to be managing it for their clients. And so anything they can do to kind of mitigate the risks that are going to be around, the client data that wherever it is sitting, regardless of the brand and device, is going to be important. So definitely money to be had there if you're not doing it already.
So if you're working with a customer, are you dictating the type of platforms they're using, or is the customer dictating it? So if you're implementing their technology solutions, are you providing them? Are you saying, no, you're going to be Windows, or are the customers demanding Apple stuff and then you have to deal with it? How is it working for you?
When it comes to Mac versus Windows, we let the client kind of decide that, but in general, we are dictating to the client, over time of the life cycle of the equipment that you currently have, and through your onboarding process, you're going to move towards our recommended stack of products and solutions. We've maintained that we're just going to recommend that based on the technology rather than vendor names, just so that we have that freedom to be able to change it out if we need to. But we don't expect that instantaneous. That's kind of a relationship thing that has to be done over that life cycle and onboarding with that client. But there are some things, especially within certain industries, such as graphic design, or less so now, but there are certain company types that they do have their preference, and if you want to work with that client, then yeah, you're gonna have to play ball there.
So how much more difficult is it to manage Apple devices? I mean, you probably have some experience with this. Is it really that much harder? Are the tools just not as there, or are they not as manageable? What's your experience with this?
So I personally have limited experience with it, but I know that the client base that we have worked with MDM on Apple devices with, it is a fairly locked down and restricted environment. So some of the tools that are out there don't give you the full feature set that you're looking for. So it's definitely something that you need to do a fair amount of vetting of a proper MDM solution for that. But I know that there are MSPs out there that are specialized in Apple products and have done very well for themselves. Good Travis Woods, Fort Point out in the West Coast there. I know that that's one of their key focuses.
Yeah, so Rich, so the report's saying that there's a financial upside to doing this, but also there's some challenges and difficulty. Would most MSPs find that the working through the challenge and putting investment into to manage Apple stuff as part of their solution, where's the break even? Like, is this something for every MSP that should be looking at this, or only certain ones?
It's a really it's a good and somewhat complicated question, actually, because part of the answer to that is this would be a whole lot easier if the RMM vendors, for example, were a little bit more focused. I know I'm just off the top of my head, I know Enable has been focused on Mac management for a long time. So if you are invested in a platform that comes with good, robust Mac management functionality, it's a whole lot easier to get into this. And at that point, it does become one of these, well, why are you not doing that, given both the revenue potential and the excellent point Henry made about security? Do you really want to, have those devices out there that are not under your management? If in order to accommodate these devices means new products, learning new systems, et cetera, then there is that kind of there's an investment being made, and you have to measure the ROI on that. And that, it's probably going to vary company by company. I couldn't tell you, just on my own where that cutoff is. But it's not as cut and dried as just go do it, everybody. It will be harder for some people to to make that switch than others. But I guess I would kind of encourage people to stretch a little bit if it is difficult for them to do, for both of the reasons we just cited.
I think if you give it a little bit more time too, there has to be a financial gain to it, because you look at the number of vendors that are working on ways to try and make it easier to do the MDM portion of that, so that you can touch it, and maintain those Apple devices. And getting back to, I guess, kind of the earlier discussion about security frameworks, those are devices or assets that are going to fall under one of those security frameworks that you're going to need to have controls put in place for. So,
yeah, very interesting. Rich, any other last thoughts before we move on to vendors on the Vanguard?
No, there's more interesting data in the report. We'll have a link to it in the show notes, and check it out.
Absolutely. All right. So, Rich, our next story that we're going to talk about is vendors on the Vanguard. That's something that we do every year. Before we get to kind of dive into it, why don't you tell people what vendors on the Vanguard is and kind of what it's all about?
And it's interesting that you bring up that this is something we do every year. I got a query from our colleague Colleen Fry earlier today, just asking me, how long have we been doing this? And I didn't really know. I had to go look, and we've been doing it for a decade now. I think the first time we came out with one of these lists was in 2012. And basically the idea is, all year long, as I'm traveling around, going to events and covering the industry, I'm learning about startups, or sometimes very established companies whose name you just don't hear come up very often in the channel. And so these are interesting companies. They're maybe overlooked, underappreciated, emerging, up and coming names that I just kind of figure people in our audience would probably be interested in knowing about. And then once a year, I come out with this vendors on the Vanguard list that just collects typically somewhere between 15 and 20 of them. And it was the cover story for our February issue. The story just went up on our website Monday morning this week.
And it's a good list, interesting list. Always fun to hear some of these names that most of these I had never heard of. As I was looking through here, I think my favorite name is probably either Bizity, I liked a lot, or I read it as Nopes. I thought it was kind of cool. Some of them sound like creams that you would put on for like athletic injury, but we can go through a couple of those. But why don't we go ahead, Rich, and pick out a couple of these companies to talk about. And Henry, I know you probably read through the list and read through some of these. I want to get your take on some of the companies that you thought were kind of interesting that you might want to check out. So, Rich, why don't we go to you first?
Well, I'll start with Cognition 360, and I'm going to do that for entirely loathsome and self-serving reason. So, I said we've been doing these lists for 10 years here. 2014, I'm preparing my list. I put a company called CentraStage on the list. They were this sort of smaller RMM vendor based in the UK, and I put them on the vendors on the Vanguard list. And weeks later, Autotask announces that they have purchased CentraStage. This was when Autotask was still an independent company. So, wow, I guess I got that one right there. Last year, there was a company on the list called SpinPanel that does cloud management. Weeks later, Enable announces that they've bought SpinPanel. In 2017, I had a security vendor on the list called Elusive, and just a few months ago, Proofpoint bought Elusive for apparently an undisclosed but apparently very large sum of money. I've got a pretty good track record on identifying companies that other vendors seem to see interest in, and that includes Cognition 360, because you might remember, Matt, just, I don't know, 2-3 episodes ago on the show, we were talking about the fact that ScalePad has bought Cognition 360. And that happened after I had finished the article, but before it actually went up on our website here. What is Cognition 360? Well, it's a system that draws on a database, anonymous data from 100 million ConnectWise PSA tickets, and then they use machine learning and predictive AI to kind of go through all that data and then use it to benchmark various MSP metrics against their peers in the industry, again, anonymously. So if you want to know how you're kind of doing on invoicing related statistics or time entry related statistics. How prompt and complete, comprehensive are your techs in terms of logging their time and so on. How do your sales numbers in terms of opportunities identified and closed stack up against others? This is a tool that can kind of help you do that. And as the ScalePad folks said when they announced that they had purchased the company, right now it's all about ConnectWise PSA, but they are moving in the direction of adding other PSA platforms on there. So down the road, I forget the timing, you'll be able to use this with other systems like that. Another system I thought was really interesting was one called Humanize IT. And this is one that was actually created by an MSP, I believe in the Vancouver, British Columbia area, if I remember right. And the basic issue is here, we all know that most channel pros are very comfortable with, they tend to have technology conversations with customers when what they really need to be doing is having business conversations with the customer. And this Humanize IT product is designed to make that easier for you, to basically structure a business-focused kind of conversation. So this too is drawing on anonymous data aggregated from all of your different customers, and then it allows you to score your customers in 4 different areas against other businesses like them, and kind of show them how they're doing. And so it's architecture, service, risk, and strategy. And you can go into a room with a business owner and kind of show them, here's how you're doing against your peers. Here's what would enable you to get those scores up, and here's where the risks are, the lost opportunities if you don't get those scores up, or if they were to go down even further. So the Humanize IT product was made, like I said, by an MSP that developed it for its own use, and they saw these enormous revenue gains once they were able to have a conversation with customers that the customer could more easily understand. And then last but not least, I'll mention a security product. This is this solution won ConnectWise's Pitch It competition last year. Every year for the last few years, ConnectWise has been doing this thing where startup vendors who integrate with the ConnectWise platform can compete for prize money. There were something like 18 contenders and 3 finalists. Alert Ops is the company that emerged victorious from that process. And they make a system basically that is designed to help MSPs consolidate and act on security alerts more effectively. So you are probably getting alerts from a number of different sources. Unless you are completely standardized on one vendor's platform, that means there may be multiple consoles where these things are coming in through that you have to keep an eye on. So if you had one interface that collects all the different alerts, it would enable it to be more efficient from that standpoint. And then they go beyond that. You can set up rules, customized customer by customer if you want, in terms of how particular kinds of alerts get routed, which ones get escalated and which ones don't. There's integration with PSA systems, so you can create tickets, close tickets, update tickets, a lot of that kind of stuff. $8 per user per month for up to 10 users. There's a starter pack for up to 5 users that's free. Interesting product, and it got the attention of the folks at ConnectWise and their partners as well, because they won this prize.
Interesting company choices, interesting solutions. Henry, you read through the list. Is there one or two that you'd like to mention that you found interesting?
Sure. Yeah. So we're actually currently utilizing Lifecycle Insights. Alex Farlane and Marnie over there are awesome. The entire team's awesome, but it's really helped us expand kind of that trusted advisor role with our clients, and make that cadence a lot easier of doing QBRs with them, and kind of identifying strategically where we can assist their businesses in a much better way. One of the other ones we're not working with, but I think is something that is going to monumentally change our industry, is a company called Roost that's playing in the RPA space. And I think that whole category of RPA is really interesting to watch, both as things like OpenAI, ChatGPT start getting integrations into it, I think that that's really going to unlock a lot of opportunity for MSPs to kind of either hyper automate some of the tasks that they're doing, but also potentially address some of the staffing issues that we have.
So Rich, Roost is a company that does is it an AI company? Tell what's their kind of solution about?
So like Henry was saying, RPA, robotic process automation, they play in the same space, for example, as PIA, which is another very young company out of Australia that's doing RPA for MSPs. There's MSP bots. There's I think it's UiPath. There are a bunch of these, and it really does feel like this RPA for MSPs field is exploding at almost the same pace as AI and the open AI. Like, nobody had heard of ChatGPT prior to November 30th, and everybody and their uncle knows about it now. And the advances we're seeing in the capabilities of engines like that is just incredible. And in terms of how fast it's happening, and it almost feels like some of this application of AI around automating the easier MSP tasks so that you can get by with fewer employees, like you were saying, and also just focus the employees that you have on the more important, more profitable kinds of activities as opposed to password resets and so on. It just feels like there are companies popping up out of the woodwork all the time that are focused on this, and the solutions that they're talking about are just really, really interesting. And there wasn't a lot like this a year ago. This isn't something that has just been invented in that time frame, but all of a sudden it just feels like there are a lot of companies around doing it. And we spoke last week. They're not all startups, right? Because ConnectWise has built some Chat GPT based functionality into its RMM system and has a lot more stuff coming. So this is just a really fast moving field in managed services software.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there's a lot of greenfield there for new companies and new solutions to kind of pop up. I'll be interested to watch and see if something comes out around the DLP, the data loss prevention side of that, because I don't know that people are really thinking about everything that they're entering into ChatGPT or any of those OpenAI type of solutions and where that data is going.
Yeah, anything you type into anywhere goes somewhere and is analyzed by something. That's for sure. So Rich, there was one that caught my eye that I wanted to talk about because it's something that we've seen a little bit more of, because I think it's a pain point that a lot of MSPs have, and that is this NOPS or NOPS or whatever it is. And this is all about saving money on cloud spend, optimizing, making sure that they're not spending more on cloud than they're doing. And there's another company that's similar, does a similar thing. Is that kind of similar to something that Gradient does? Or is this company's spin a little different?
So there are actually a whole bunch of companies like Augment, for example, is almost any vendor in cloud management probably has some sort of tool or functionality for cost optimization and identifying opportunities to disable resources that aren't being used or right size some virtual machine in a more affordable way. I think, if I remember right, that the big cloud, AWS and Microsoft have tools that can help with this kind of thing. The thing that grabbed my attention about, and you said it might be pronounced NOPS. I'm guessing NOPS, but it could be NOPS. I don't know. And there's no pronunciation guide on the website that I was able to come across. The thing that was particularly interesting about this this solution, it has just interesting functionality as well. But the pricing on this one is 100% based on how much you save. So the more money they save you, the more you pay them. But if they don't actually save you any money, you pay them nothing. So it's pay for performance, basically. On they can make all the promises they want. They're not actually going to collect a dime from you unless they deliver.
It's an interesting symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, that is interesting. So what do you think about that, Henry? Is that something that would entice you?
Yeah, we are constantly hunting down, whether or not all the licensing changes and cloud assets and so forth are being correctly reflected in both our documentation as well as being whether we're underutilizing or overutilizing for a particular client for profitability viewpoint. But having that type of thing and having kind of the I guess moxie to be willing to put your money where your mouth is and say that you're only going to take if you're able to actually deliver is that's interesting.
It is interesting. I think that's going to work out well for them. I really do. Assuming that they can actually save people money, because if not, they'll be out of business in probably about 3 weeks, or as soon as the coffers run dry. So cool. There's lots of other companies in here. Rather than kind of go through, because there's some interesting IoT ones that you came across that I think people should check out, especially if you're an IoT. And then there's some other ones in here that also sounded very interesting, like Ven, which is a virtual desktop alternative kind of solution. Sounded really, really neat. So we'll go and find the link to this article. It'll be in the description area. If you're on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, hit notifications, hit the thumbs up, hit all the buttons except thumbs down. Don't hit that one. We don't like that button. It shouldn't even exist, but it does. But don't press it. I know you're tempted, and probably by telling you not to press it, you're even more tempted to press it. But do the thumbs up one instead. That one is the better button to hit. And do that. But then if you're watching, you can open up the description area and you can read through and read about all these different companies that are in the vendors of the Vanguard piece. Always an interesting read, Rich. Very cool for you putting that together and sharing that with us. But Rich, I'm excited because we're going to move on, and we've got an amazing guest interview coming up. I know it's going to be awesome. Janet Schijns, CEO of the JS Group, often someone that many in the channel know probably, is actually going to join us live and in person. I'm so excited. Henry's going to stick with us and be a part of that interview. You're not going to want to miss it, folks. We will be right back. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly. Henry Timm is still with us here on the other side, and we're joined by an awesome guest for an interview. I can't wait. Everyone on the channel partners with any number of vendors to put together a stack of products and services to provide their customers. But are you getting the most out of those partnerships? Well, here to talk about what Channel Pros can do to strengthen and get better value from these vendor relationships is the CEO of JS Group, the one and only Janet Schijns. Welcome, Janet.
Hi, thanks for having me. Awesome to be here.
It's great to have you on the show. I've been looking forward to the day when we could get you on to talk about stuff. And I said almost needs no introduction, right? Because a lot of people are very familiar with the JS Group and with Janet Schijns. But for those people who have been like living on the moon or under a rock for the last 10 years, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Again, thanks for having me on. Janet Schijns, JS Group. So really, we do 2 things. The first thing is we work with partners to help them accelerate their business. That ranges everywhere from working with them on their business and marketing plans to working with demand generation. We actually built $3 billion worth of funnel for partners last year through our demand generation practice. So we're super proud of that. And we typically do that with the vendor's money. So we'll talk more about that later. And the second thing we do is we work with those very same vendors to try to get them to modernize their program, or if their new vendors launch a program that actually matters and is meaningful to the partners versus kind of the old-fashioned way of thinking about it where the vendor was the product, because the channel partner now is the product. And with services being so robust, the vendors have to look at the channel differently. And so we spend a lot of time working with vendors and trying to reset those expectations all the way to the C-suite and even the board to make sure that they treat the partners the right way. Our mission statement at JSG is really simple. It's just 3 words: save the channel. And so everything we do in every element that we do, we make sure that we're true to that mission.
Save the channel, save the world. It's almost
save the channel, save the world. That's right, because the channel provides all the technology solutions the world runs on. So exactly.
It's like an episode of Heroes over there at JS Group all the time.
It is, yeah.
Awesome. So before we dive in too much into that, now JS Group has done some other things to help partners as well. Because I know, Rich, remind me, last year someone from JS Group was doing kind of like something about LinkedIn, building profiles on LinkedIn.
Selling. Yep.
Yeah. So what are some of the other things that you do for partners?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Social selling was a great example of one of the demand generation programs we did last year. We were so honored to do it in conjunction with your events. where we retrain the salespeople in the industry to sell in a digital world where social selling is the norm. We do intent-based marketing programs where we legally, I want to say legally stalk enterprise, corporate, government, mid-market, small business buyers when they're exhibiting search behaviors for the very terms that you provide. Like for Henry, it might be some cybersecurity solutions. And we then warm those leads up until they're fully qualified sales leads. So that's another example. We do very proud of the fact that we run social media accounts for many channel influencers and many channel people and help them to stand up and bring content to the market that's meaningful and fast. In fact, all of the recent channel influencers this year were clients of ours. So we're pretty excited about that. And then last but not least, one of the things we do with partners is we'll help them interview sellers. So one of the areas that partners tend to struggle with is identifying somebody who's going to actually be a good salesperson for their firm. And there's any number of training programs you can put those people through, but actually qualifying as you're interviewing them or considering keeping them or retaining them is something that we do as a mission of passion with our co-founder, Roy, who's been a seasoned sales leader for a lot of years. And so for any partner who's struggling, we do have some tools we can provide to you and help you out in that element. We wish you the best because we understand you want to make revenue. You are a for-profit business.
Awesome. So, and anybody watching on YouTube right now knows that I'm actually dying to ask about your background. So for those who are listening, behind her, she's got like these shelves and there's all this cool like Star Wars stuff on there. So it turns out you are a big Star Wars fan.
I am a huge Star Wars fan, and the shelf behind me, which probably has, I don't know, 30 items on it, is about 1% of my collection. I have a storage facility with stuff in it, and wow. I just loved it from an early age. My dad took me to see it, and it was that moment where I think I saw it another 14 times, in the next few weeks. And as a little person, as a young person, just the empowerment of women in the storyline. It was one of the first times we saw a female hero, right? Like Princess Leia. It was, one of the first times we really saw that demonstrated in a sci-fi movie. And it just became kind of a way of life. And so as all of my friends, as I worked at Verizon as the chief channel officer and Motorola and other places, all my friends, as the bonuses were so great in tech and commissions, etc., they would buy, I don't know, shoes or vacations or cars, and I would buy Star Wars as at the time what they called toys. Now everybody understands that I made a much better move than they did because I bought appreciating assets and they bought depreciating assets. So I love Star Wars, and I just think that it's a fun franchise.
Yeah, if you were a collector, especially back in the day, and you kept that stuff in boxes, you were very, very smart.
I did. I even have they made prototypes for the Star Troopers before they did the first movie. So they kept changing the prototype. There was 70 renditions of the prototype, and I have number 63 of that prototype. So that's my most precious one. It's, under lock and cage. But yeah.
Wow. So tell me a little bit more. I know that I will not make this a Star Wars only interview, by the way, but I'm trying to know. Tell me about some of the stuff that you've collected.
So I have everything from pieces of ships in my storage facility to the original dolls, to the original play sets, puzzles, games, posters, autographed memorabilia. It really doesn't matter. The stuff I have behind me here is fun to look at, but none of it, super high collector value. And I'm now, even with Mandalorian coming out, I've started a Mandalorian collection. And somebody asked me once what made me want to buy things, what specific things. I am more of a fan of the original, 3 through 6. But I was pretty, when I was younger, I just didn't really care. If somebody had something to sell for $15, when eBay first got popular, everybody was just getting rid of all the stuff in their garages. I just bought lots and lots of stuff.
So do you have like pieces like from like the movie, or like from the? Oh, that's cool. What would be?
I have a piece of I have a piece of one of the fighters. I have a piece of one of the Millennium Falcon dashes. Yeah. So
do you have any? Do you have any wish list items that you?
I do. I really would love to get something from Princess Leia from one of the movies, and I've been unable to do that. And since Carrie Fisher passed away, those are even more dear. So I'm gonna have to sell a lot more stuff this year, and then maybe, make that my goal, right?
Very, very cool. So last Star Wars question. So instead of the movies, 3 through 6, your favorite, do you have a particular favorite Star Wars movie?
No, I don't like to make favorites because, it makes the other movies feel bad. So no, I'm just a fan of the whole storyline, other than, those 1 through 3 Jar Jar Binks storyline didn't really do much for me. But other than that, no, I love them all equally.
Any particular character that you like the most?
Princess Leia.
Now, have you been liking?
In recent years, like Jin and Rey, and I think they've been just such positive female role models for the next generation. But I'm a traditionalist, so I loved Han Solo and Chewbacca, and wasn't as big of a Luke fan, but I'm more of a traditional fan, I guess you would say.
So if you like the ones in those vein, you're probably digging the Mandalorian, right? Because that's very much
loving it, loved Endor, but I just think it's a great escape from our real life, and just a lot of fun.
Well, very cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing that with us. I could talk about this for hours, so I better move on. Or Rich is going to start yelling at me over here in the chat. So we're here to talk about partner relationships and doing more with your vendors, strengthening those relationships. So what is the way you see a vendor versus how maybe an MSP might see a vendor?
Yeah, so I think it starts with understanding, as a partner, as an MSP, you are the product. The days of the vendor being the product are over. And a lot of vendors maybe haven't woken up to that reality, but that's the reality. When you think about the changes that have happened when we went from resale, right, to more than 50% of most channel businesses now being services or recurrent services that are their profit drivers, versus the resale of the vendor solution. That really points out to you kind of that first step of, how do I think differently than the partners? I think too many of the partners, because they were born and raised in the industry, bless them, because what an amazing job they do to make sure we all have technology, haven't changed their vendor management plan. That's right, us, the partner, managing them, versus the old school approach of them managing you. And what we're seeing with the fast growth partners that we work with, they're now down selecting vendors in different ways and giving the vendors a wake-up call, because they have a vendor management process that includes things like, what's the vendor's go-to-market plan template for working with the MSP, as opposed to the vendor's go-to-market plan for working with the vendor? What are the sales agreements for co-selling support? What's the marketing funding that's not attached to their strings, but attached to how the MSP does business? And so that's, I think, how I think maybe differently than others do about the vendors.
Are you seeing an increase in due diligence process from MSPs vetting your vendors?
I am. And a lot of it, it's such a great question, Henry. A lot of it comes down to 2 things. So one is definitely security. Right there's no lack of new vendors every day. That I'm sure you get 100 calls a week. But there's no lack of new vendors. There's 6,197 security vendors that are trying to sell through the channel at my last count last week. Many of them wouldn't pass an enterprise security test. So a lot of MSPs that have a security practice are starting to add due diligence around security. But we're also seeing a different kind of due diligence where MSPs are starting to say, look, I likely buy from a distributor, a TD SYNNEX, an Ingram, an Arrow, a D&H, whoever your favorite might be. And they likely have many of these vendors. And so maybe I don't need a direct relationship with the vendor. If it's a one-off, once in a while, I might buy their stuff. Maybe I just push them the way vendors have pushed the partners to distribution. We're seeing those partners push the vendors to distribution and saying, hey, look, get into distribution. And then if I need to buy your stuff, I'll buy it. And then saying, but if we can get to the due diligence where we have a marketing agreement, not a sales agreement, a marketing agreement about how we're going to go to market together, then we'll work on onboarding you into our vendor management process. And if not, we're simply going to procure you as part of our BOM, our bill of materials, from a distributor. And I'm seeing that happen a lot. People getting much more selective, because after all, I mean, the value in your business is not the vendor products you sell. The value in your business is the advice, the consulting, the integration, the management. that you do for your clients, they wouldn't even notice if you switched out most vendors for another vendor, right? If you on your BOM, you said, hey, you know what, we were using this security endpoint, but now we're going to use this security endpoint. 95% of the MSP's clients, particularly an SMB, wouldn't have any idea it changed. So the vendors are in a different situation, and they need to wake up to that reality.
So with the velocity of change in our industry, how often do you think an MSP should be looking at kind of re-evaluating that due diligence process with their existing vendors?
I think at least annually. And I think what we've been telling MSPs to do is, listen, write your vendor plan. What's your ideal vendor? What categories? Where do you need them? What are your rules of engagement going to be with that vendor? What's your give to get plan for the vendors? Because many times the vendors think the give to get is 20% discount or 10% commission. That's typically not actually what the MSP wants, right? The MSP may want exposure to accounts. The MSP may want level 1 and level 2 support. There's things that you want. So what's your give to get, and how are you going to measure success and further investment with them? And then draft that plan and live to the plan, right? Changing it as the market changes. And so that means that for many of our MSP clients, the first thing they've done, to your point, is they've said, okay, where did I join a program just in case I might sell their solution? And can I get some of those one-off products somewhere else, and let me just terminate those vendor agreements? And then how do I focus on my key ideal vendors? This is like anything else, right? It's a 90-10 rule. You've probably got just a small number of vendors that are super important to your business, and then a whole bunch of others that, maybe are a great relationship or maybe aren't and need to be replaced. And by focusing on those key ideal vendors, those MSPs are saying, okay, how do I increase my business results due to the work I do with these vendors, right? And how do I increase my results 50%, 70%, 100%, whatever that would have to do? And what would have to be true for this to happen? And is this vendor going to be able to be true to this, or do I need a different vendor partner? And so typically we're seeing that happening as part of the market action plan or business plan that the MSP does annually. I like when you do it twice a year, only because our industry just kind of, right, we're very fast, but at least once a year.
So I'm curious how much of this is negotiable. So you've got a list of criteria. This is what I want to get out of a partner relationship. And you can do the evaluation of saying, I'm getting it from this vendor, I'm not getting it from that vendor there. But before you just sort of de-invest in a vendor, how much of this can you negotiate, and what kind of leverage do you need to have in order to tell a vendor, look, I'm going to take my alliances elsewhere unless we can work out X, Y, and Z?
Clearly, Rich, great question. Clearly, the newer vendors are more able to negotiate with you, right? Good luck if you're trying to negotiate with Microsoft or IBM or Cisco, or right. But even there, even in the biggest vendors, the program is what the program is. And we can, I think, all agree that many of them are horribly antiquated, damaging to the partners. They have antiquated, tiered, increasing discounts because you did more volume, which makes zero sense, because honestly, wouldn't you need more discounts when you started your practice? The whole thing doesn't make any sense, right? But there's not a lot you can do to change the bigger vendors' programs today. What you can do with the person that's assigned to manage you is say, these are the things I need to grow. Am I going to get them from you in this relationship? And many times small MSPs think they don't have a voice in that. And that's not true. Let's think about, Rich, your guys' events, right? We did all of your events last year, and in every event there was, a lot of partners in each room, in each area, and they're all talking to each other, right? So partners that are small but influential still can get exactly what they want from these vendors. Now, how do you think about influence? Say you're $1 million a year MSP with 3 people, right? And you're saying there's no way a vendor is going to give me what I want. Well, we have one partner who spent a whole year investing in becoming a major influencer. He's got 4 people, 1.2 million in sales. And because of his influence in the industry, because he's typically speaking at events, because he's typically blogging, he's on social media, and other partners are listening to him, gets whatever he wants from the vendors. Now, again, it may not be in the program, right? But the account manager, CAM, PAM, whatever the heck you want to call them, is able to do things for them that they're not able to do for others. Unmapped territories being an example where they had somebody out and they hadn't filled the spot, and they brought 10 accounts over to the MSP to manage. So a lot of times it's working with the people versus the program. And I think that's where, as an industry, we've gotten wrapped around. Now, again, if you're trying to get Microsoft to do it, it's gonna be a little harder. But the power of that community, the power of the community you've built to raise up and say, this vendor is not working right with us, and we need you to do it, is meaningful right now. Really, truly meaningful, as every vendor is grappling, particularly with SMB MSPs, and how they're going to address those markets.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, how antiquated some of the programs are, and like how you get stuff that you really should have at the beginning. And there was something that came to mind that we've talked about once on the show before, where we were talking about a program, and once you get to the highest level, you get like a customer or a partner success manager on your account. And it's like, well, wouldn't you need the partner success manager to help you get successful in the first place?
Right. It doesn't make any sense. It's upside down. And at the same time, customers have changed how they buy, right? Constantly increasing their desire to have a partner involved in the solutioning, because the partner is who's going to provide the services. And yet these programs, right, when we went from resale to more than 50% of the businesses having services businesses, when the customers changed how they bought, when all the profit drivers for the business became services, and the resale of vendor solutions kind of took a back seat for the MSPs, so many of these vendors haven't changed their program enough to meet the reality, although they sure do love to make non-meaningful changes to their programs. Someone in marketing has to be getting paid by the change at this point. So we're seeing vendor programs and engagement needing to really shift to behavior, right? That old-fashioned, hey, get more people certified, get more revenue, move up, and get more support, needs to be flipped upside down and say, get more support so that you can get more customers and get more revenue and do more services. And by the time I get to the top of the program, if I still need that support, something's horribly broken in my business because I've done it 100 times. Why would I need a concierge support now? Why would I need, a lot of the things, right? Even the discount on deals. I've told vendors, look, here's what you should do. Give them a massive discount on the first 3 deals that they close, because it's expensive to onboard you as a vendor. Like, let them win a couple accounts with you. Do whatever you have to do. And the vendors go, well, you get that discount when you sell $2 million. Well, it's not really going to work. So that's just an old-fashioned iron worker approach. And we're not iron workers anymore. We're services people.
So with all the resources that sound like they're out there that are going unused, especially by small and younger MSPs, what would you recommend to them to take that initial step into getting utilization out of those? Write
a really good marketing plan. So here's the reality where we are as an industry. 5 years ago, 51% of the buyer's time was spent with a seller. Now, 17% of the buyer's time is spent with a seller, which also means you don't need to hire as many salespeople. Where are they spending that time? Self-guided journeying for marketing. So the better you do marketing, the more likely you are to get customers. Period. End of story. I could go on the data. Like, Matt could talk about Star Wars for 10 hours. I could talk about the data behind why marketing is now leading the business for 10 or 15 hours. And I do sometimes when we do workshops. But the reality is, write a good marketing plan. Be specific in the marketing plan how you're going to acquire, retain, and upsell clients. And then go and submit to have that marketing plan supported by the vendors. It's the most important thing. There is close to, my estimation, because we do the math over here, I'm not the smartest person here. We have these PhD folks that are data analysts at JS Group, and they're so much smarter than me. By best estimation last year, there was 15.8% of MDF budgets across the IT and security space. So I'm leaving telco out of it, Henry, because it was even higher in telco. That 15.8% was unused in MDF, and that equates to close to $28 million just in the US that was unused quarterly.
Wow.
So it's over 100 million in a year that was not used. So if you have a good marketing plan and you have the right marketing tactics with ROI and you have the right vendors, right? So instead of trying to go to the unwashed masses of 100 vendors, go to your key specific vendors. You'll find that as the quarters ebb and flow, they realize they haven't spent all the MDF. And if you're not asking for golf trinkets or t-shirts, and you're actually saying, hey, we'll bring 20 new clients in, they're going to fund that. And we're seeing MSPs that have doubled, tripled, quadrupled the marketing spend dollars they're getting from vendors and distributors. Don't let me forget to say that. Your distributors get a ton of MDF that they're supposed to give to you guys. So you got to ask. If you have that marketing program, all of a sudden, the end of every quarter, you'll start to see approvals start sneaking in.
So at what point in a MSP's maturity do you think they should start reaching out to work with an organization like JS Group?
That's such a great question, and thank you for that. We have worked with companies as small as $1 million and 3 or 4 people. Typically under that, we have very simple programs. We have our social selling videos and workbooks that are available for $199, $99 if you're a ChannelPro attendee. Always a discount, Rich, Matt, for you guys. But we have a couple programs that are more, kind of transactional. But we typically tell people, look, before you hire your first salesperson, I will speak to any MSP, as will my whole team, for free for an hour. What I would impassionately say is, before you hire your first salesperson or your first marketing person, because you're getting serious about trying to build business, have the hour call with us and we'll just have a conversation. Doesn't mean you're going to work with me. Lots of times I'll refer you over to somebody else or tell you to hire your nephew or your niece or, whatever, somebody who's good at digital. But at least before you start to make those human investments, have the conversation and see, how better you might work it. So thank you for that question.
Yeah. Are you seeing certain vendors or verticals within the vendors that are more open to adopting a more modern relationship with MSPs?
Yes, shockingly, we're working with Cisco right now on their SMB MSP, and we know long complained about for their approach down market. They have really received the message, and I think they're making some good changes. I'm going to hold Microsoft aside because I think they're their own independent village, if you will. And they've done changes to their program that we can love or hate, right? It doesn't really matter where you are on that one. It just is what it is. But we're seeing more and more vendors, particularly in the security space, that are coming to the table and saying, we want to work with you. We're seeing Barracuda, Juniper, Fortinet, have all made SMB changes to their programs recently. And again, we can argue whether they're the right or the wrong ones, right? But at least they're leaning into that marketplace. And I always tell everybody, it's really simple. If you're not sure if the vendor's channel friendly, just flip me whatever they gave you on the program and I'll let you know. Because, a lot of times the program isn't friendly, but there's behind the scene things that they're doing that can make it more friendly. Again, they want you.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would assume that with the number of MSPs that you've been working with and vendors that you've been working with, that you're able to gain some additional insights that would benefit an MSP to be able to know whether or not would that be a factual?
It is. Yeah, it is. We typically will do the vendor management plan with an MSP to say, okay, let's go through your vendor management plan. Let's figure it out. Where are we going to go back and leverage distribution? Where are we going to leverage direct? Where are we going to get marketing funds from? Where aren't we going to get marketing funds from? And how are we going to think about, managing that? Now, the key, why MSPs, I think, and Henry, you can probably answer this question, why MSPs are interested in doing better and managing their vendors is because they get somewhere between $8 to $12 of services on every, dollar of product that they sell. So they can sell more product dollars, they're going to sell more service dollars. When they sell more service dollars, it's good for their business. And so the key, though, is what's the shortest path to the next service dollars for most of the MSPs. And some vendors just aren't the shortest path. They may be very difficult to work with. Maybe their order management is broken. Maybe they have that antiquated channel conflict model where the account executive that was hired 7 minutes ago from college believes he owns an account that you've worked with for 22 years, you know, all that craziness that happens. And so, yeah, we typically know that. We rank and rate their programs regularly. So if you're thinking about joining and what they're telling you versus what we're seeing, we can usually help with that. I also continue to plug the fact that your distributor can be really helpful too.
How often are you seeing larger or older MSPs leave stuff on the table?
So often. It is a game for the folks that want to be aggressive. The old, and I don't like, I'm kind of old, so I, maybe I won't say older today. The more experienced MSPs sometimes get, and we all do this, right? We get wrapped up in this concept that it can't happen because it's never happened that way before. And so I'll give you a really great example. We were working with a partner, and I think we all know that customers have changed how they buy, right? And they've changed who they're talking to about technology. And so many times they have a new partner. And it may not be the one who did the purchase transaction in the past, or may not even be the one that does it in the future, because that transaction could be done versus an older, MSP or reseller, a marketplace through direct. The key is, though, that these newer partners are an influencer in the sale. And so, as an example, think about the new world where most businesses' client engagement is increasingly click reliant versus door reliant. And therefore, they're relying on a digital partner to run their digital assets, right? So think about the person who builds and runs the website, search optimization, marketing, digital commerce solutions. The customer is going to 100% have them involved in any technology that touches that digital channel. And the digital agency's voice of influence is going to be massive, but they're not going to become an MSP. So this represents both an opportunity for the newer MSPs to get a referral program set up, and at minimum, at least if your clients are 100 miles from your company, which tends to be the model, 50 or less in a lot of them, just go get the digital agencies in your market and sign them up for referrals and have a co-directional referral, and you're going to get a ton of leads because they want their technology to work and not hear the website's down or the things didn't go through or we had a security breach. And you can push a new program back at the vendors to have tracks for partner to partner in their program using tools like Partner Tap, which is a really great tool to work with another partner on a lead. And then make sure that they pay for those leads. So what we saw a partner do that we were working with last year is he set up this referral program, digital agencies, he captured like 10, went back to the vendor, said, this is what I'm going to do. This is how many leads they're going to give me. The cost for me to get that leads is probably, $82,000 based on me growing my business this much. Will you pay for the leads? And they did. Where the old school MSP in the same market, right? It was the greater Chicago market. In the same market said, I don't know about that. It seems like a lot, And guess what? They actually lost clients to the new MSP because the digital agency said, I think you should work with Henry. Henry's who you should work with. And when 50% of my sales are now coming through my website, aren't I going to listen to the guy running my website on who should run my technology versus the guy from 25 years ago who used to sell me laptops, and now is selling me help desk and stuff? Absolutely. I'm going to listen to the digital guy because he is important to my business. And so this one MSP grew 311% just by changing the game. So that, that's what we like to work with MSPs on. How do you change the game and outcompete? And then the vendors will always pay you for that.
I was going to ask you about something, and now I'm not so sure it's even worth getting into, because I think you are rightly encouraging our audience to be more demanding versus less.
Yes, more demanding. Be a tougher customer. Don't be such a good sport.
So are there any, because there are a lot of channel partners out there who are unhappy with a lot of their vendors for various reasons. Do they have misconceptions, overinflated expectations of their partners, or is that a trivial problem in relation to not really going, getting at the table with these vendors and getting what they deserve? I
think it is trivial compared to, so two things. I want to answer that two ways. So first of all, if you have a problem with a vendor who's critical to your business, Because sometimes we complain about vendors and they're not critical to our business. And so we should not take that distraction on, right? Like, oh, I hate working with this partner, but they're this vendor and they're 1% of my business, right? I don't really care, right? But if they're a critical part of my business, you do have to complain, but you have to do it in the right way. So you have to ask for what you want and show them the way you want it. And don't be afraid to escalate. Talking to many of the channel chiefs in the industry, they never hear from partners. Partners don't reach out to them. What they hear from the voice of the partner is that pretty little survey that their vendor program team does and cleans all up for them with the net promoter score of the partners. And 85% of our partners have a CSAT of, it's all, and then they go to events and they stand up on the stage, they get off, and the channel account managers, the partner account managers make sure they see the friendly partners. Who do they schedule the meetings with? The nice ones, right? Who do they see? The nice ones. And at the regional events where they would actually get the real story from the MSPs, they don't go. They send that very same person out to that event that is going to roll back up to them how to go. How was the event? It was great. We got 20 new partners. And they never mention that 40 of the partners there were saying, oh my gosh, you're impossible to work with. I had this deal, I couldn't get it. So I really think that, one, if you're a channel chief listening to this, and I hope you do, because this is a great show and you should be listening to it, or if you're friends with a channel chief, you should tell them you need to go to the events like the ChannelPro events and actually talk to the MSPs. It's your job. It's not your job to stand up at a keynote stage in front of 5,000 people and then fly back out to the next city to talk to your team again. It's your job to talk to the partners. And to the partners, it's your job to talk to the channel leader. Make a call. And if you can't get them and they won't answer you, call the CRO, call the CEO, call a board member. If it's important enough to your business that it's bad for your business what the vendor's doing, or it's keeping you from growing in your business, escalate. I just saw last week an MSP who wrote a note to a board member on a company I'm working with. And let me tell you what kind of action that got. That board member brought that right down to the CEO, who brought it right down to the CRO, who said, this better change. So don't think that you can't have a voice. Be assertive, reach out. Now, of course, you don't always want to be the person who's complaining, right? So you also want to work on those relationships from a more positive standpoint, but do not think just because you're one small MSP that you don't have a voice. You do.
Well, it sounds like if you have a problem and you need something looked at, or you're dealing with something, odds are there's many others just like you.
That's right. That's right.
We're dealing with that.
And that's where your guys' events are so great. Sorry, shameless plug of your guys' events, because you can get there and have those conversations, right, with the group of partners who are going to be a little more honest, a little more trustworthy. And I think we're mere year away from somebody being smart enough to do vendor ratings that are agnostic. And I was hoping it would be CompTIA, but I think that they probably, that's probably too alienating. It'll have to be somebody who doesn't have an event. So maybe it'll have to be me, because I go to people's events versus do my own. But I do think the partners are raring at trying to rank the vendors. And the one thing I would say to the vendors, or if you're a partner and you're saying, hey, I don't know if they're going to listen to me, just pull up the Reddit thread. There is always a Reddit thread. Pull up the Reddit thread or the Facebook conversation in one of the IT groups and send them that and say, hey, what I'm talking about isn't just me. Like, go read your Reddit thread. It's ugly.
So if we're scoring and giving vendors letter grades, what types of things do you think an MSP should be putting into that equation when they're giving that score?
I love that. Obviously, product performance, right? I mean, that's kind of, the MSPs are the smartest people I know about technology. So obviously, I think functionality, as built, as promised, is critical. Pricing, their ability to support the partner, both services support, sales support, marketing support, their ease of doing business from quote to cash. And then I would say their opportunity management, right? How do they help you manage? And I think you get an immediate F if you're so silly as to think as a vendor that you own any account. And no, I don't want to hear that it's Boeing, it's different. Because the story I tell every time someone says it's a big account is I just tell the Verizon versus T-Mobile story. And by the way, we helped T-Mobile build their program, and I used to be at Verizon. So, truth in lending moment. We rebuilt T-Mobile's program about 2 years ago to say there are no blocked accounts. 0, end of story. Because in the telco space, there's a lot of blocked accounts, like 7, 8, 10,000 enterprise accounts where the carrier says there are our account, which is ridiculous, right? And that's why I say you get an F immediately if you do the it's my account posture. Boeing was won over by T-Mobile. Verizon had Boeing for more than a decade. And Boeing was run over by T-Mobile. You know why? Because a partner went to Verizon to register the deal, and Verizon said, you can't sell it. It's our customer. And they lost a $140 million client because the partner then went to T-Mobile and said, can I work with Boeing? And they said, sure. And guess what? They stole that client because they didn't understand that MSP, a very large MSP, had the relationship with that enterprise client that was far beyond what the vendor had. So that's why I always give the F for that. I think the F answer. I immediately disqualify a vendor who tells me they're going to block accounts. The only thing I think you can block is government if you need to.
So from the vendor side of it, what do you think is a easy or low-hanging fruit thing that they could do to initiate a better relationship from their side to an MSP or an integrator?
So turn off all your WebEx, Zoom, Teams calls for a week with your internal team where y'all talk to each other about whatever the heck it is you're talking about. I've been there in corporate, right? Go walk the streets with an MSP. Go on services calls, go on sales calls, see how they get business, see how they serve their business, see what their customers are talking to them about. Spend time in the life of an MSP as a vendor, so you can understand just how difficult it is to sell and support your services. And that'll really change your mind. And I like to tell stories, so I'm going to tell this one. When I was at Verizon, we had a business leader who didn't really believe in the channel. You know, that one who comes in and goes, I don't know why we're paying him so much money. We could probably save money and just not have partners. And I asked him if I could have one day of his time. And I got very lucky because it was a rainy, cold, disgusting day. And I put him on the road with one of our partners who did door-to-door sales. That's how they got new SMB clients, was by going door to door in Irvington, New Jersey, with the drug needles floating past them on the street in the flooded streets, banging on doors. He did about an hour and a half, came back and said, you wanted to raise that comp for the partners for new sales? I'm like, yeah. He's like, go ahead, raise it. Oh my God, that's a horrible job. So I really think that if you get your executives out there with the partners, you're going to get more from the program. So invite those vendors to come out and really not come in for a 2-hour QBR with their PowerPoint slides, but come on out, go on a service call with my folks, go on a sales call, try to explain your product to a small business, and really let them feel the pain.
And if you bring along a film crew and you film enough of it, maybe like Netflix or HBO Max will pick it up as a series.
Yes, we should do that. The MSP reality. Yeah, that's like a reality show would be fun. Yeah.
That would be fun. But unfortunately, we've definitely gone over, and we could probably go on this for a lot longer. I know you said you could talk for 15 hours on that other topic, and I thought, this could be a 15-hour episode. Maybe we should all just strap in, but we'll just have to say we'll have to cut it there, and hopefully get you back down the road someday to talk about some other topics like that. So, but before we go to break, though, tell us out there who if they're looking to work with someone like you or the JS group, where can they go? How can they get involved with you?
Oh, love that. So you can always visit our website at jsgnow.com, or you can text me 908-883-2020. That's 908-883-2020. Just text me, say I'm an MSP, I need help, here's what it is. I'll either have someone on my team that can call you back and figure it out, or I'll know somebody that can help you. I actually mean it. I've gotten texts all over the world. Just text me or go to the website and you can email us and call us and all that other standard stuff.
Awesome stuff. Well, she's the CEO of the JS Group, Janet Schijns. Thank you so much for coming on and being on the show. And we look forward to having you back sometime down the road. With that, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Henry Timm is going to join us on the other side. We're going to break down the show, talk about this interview a little bit, have a little bit of fun. You never know what's going to happen. That's why you've got to stay tuned. We will be right back. And And we are back now with part 3 of episode 257 here. Henry Timm is still with us here on this side. I want to say first, that was an absolutely amazing interview with Janet Schijns. She is so well-spoken, so bright, so personable. And the fact that she is that big of a Star Wars fan, she is now like my new favorite person ever in the channel. Like she's awesome, like totally cool. But it was a really, really good interview. Rich, any highlights you want to take out of that?
Well, you know, it's funny. You said at one point early on there you could talk with her about Star Wars for an hour, but it would drive me crazy. I could easily talk with her about the stuff that we got into after that for an hour or more. Just really, really interesting stuff. There are a lot of things that I could sort of follow up on, but I guess the piece towards the end there that just really jumped out at me that I thought was such a great and important message was the one she delivered to the CEOs and the channel chiefs, you know, at the vendors out there, which is to get out there, turn off the filters, don't go visit or talk to the partners who your underlings are pointing you to because they know these are our favorites, our biggest fans, and so on. Get out there and have face-to-face direct contact with your partners at events and just show up. Just show up, basically, hang out, talk to people, and see what you learn. And I guarantee you it'll be an education. And I just thought that was really smart advice.
Yeah, 100%. Henry, what did you think of that interview? What kind of takeaways did you want to highlight?
There's amazing, great content there too, a lot to unpack. I think what really grabbed me was the sheer quantity of resources that are going unclaimed out there. Not just by MSPs that are younger or smaller, but in general, that there is just a ton, regardless of where you're at in your journey and maturity level as an organization. There is a ton of stuff out there to be claimed that just hasn't been taken advantage of. And I think her point about be more demanding with your vendors, I think more MSPs really do need to hear that. It's in everyone's interest that if we all succeed. So, anything we can do to help them know exactly what we need to help further those sales and so forth with our clients just means more money for them as well in the end of things. Absolutely.
Very well said. Very excellent point. So in that conversation though, Henry, we know that she's a big Star Wars fan, and we talked to her about that a little bit. I want to see the rest of her collection. It sounds like she has some really, really cool stuff. But I didn't ask you, are you a big Star Wars fan? You like those movies?
I like the old ones, so many others, but A New Hope would probably be where I enjoy that. But I have also been of course watching the new Mandalorian and all that as well. But yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, Baby Yoda is something that it's just so adorable. You have to watch it. It is a good one. So you're like more of the older ones. You're a New Hope guy. I really liked Empire Strikes Back personally. I think that was probably my favorite one. Rich, what was your favorite one?
I think I'm with Henry actually. And Empire Strikes Back of that trio, and that trio is the 3 movies that I'm most fond of. That was probably my least favorite. A very good movie, but yeah, episode 4 is still special to me.
Yeah, that was an amazing collection she had, though. Holy cow.
Yeah, I want to learn a little bit more about some of the other stuff she's got. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, we're gonna move on. Big thanks again to Janet for coming on and talking to us, and I hope we get her back sometime in the future. So Henry, we are going to play a little game that we call 5 questions. For our longtime listeners and viewers out there know that this is a game we play with a lot of our guests. And the way it works is Rich and I will ask you 5 questions. We will kind of go back and forth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The shtick of this game is that Rich and I are not allowed to write the questions in advance. We have to think of them on the fly. And sometimes that means we ask crazy and ridiculous things, but that's why it makes it fun. It's just to learn a little bit more about you and have a good time. So strap in for this. Rich, question number 1 to you.
Well, thank you very much. Henry, you play multiple instruments. You are particularly fond of the piano. What is the most difficult piano piece for you to play?
So when I'm looking for challenging music to play, I typically go to ragtime or some stuff by Rachmaninoff.
Interesting. I'm gonna expand on that. Question 1B, and I know that sounds like it would be question 2, but it's not. And because we get to do whatever we want here because we're the hosts, and we can ask 1B. Have you ever tried to play Rush E?
No, I have not.
Okay. For those who know what that is, I can point to a YouTube. There's a YouTube. It's a really hard piece, and there's YouTube videos of all kinds of people playing it. But you ever watch the Mark Rober videos?
Rober, yeah.
Yeah, he built a piano that plays like a self-playing piano, and actually like almost caught it on fire trying to play
I was
Rush
gonna say,
E.
didn't it start smoking? And yeah,
it was pretty cool. I could just see you, Henry, pounding away on the keys like that. That'd be pretty awesome. Okay, question number 2, which Rich, I'm kind of asking 2 in a row. Sorry about that. But I'm going to ask a slightly different twist on his question. Of the instruments that you play, which was the hardest for you to learn?
So I guess would be violin. I'm currently trying to learn that and failing miserably.
All right, the violin. That is a very challenging instrument from what I understand. So that's pretty cool. Are you always trying to pick up new instruments all the time?
Yeah, I try and do something new that challenges me here and there. Just try and expand my wheelhouse.
Super cool. Interesting. Rich, question number 3 to you.
So Henry, you go to a lot of conferences. I'm going to take ChannelPro events off the table because that's not fair. What is your favorite conference to go to? The one that always kind of comes through for you in terms of being time well spent.
Other than, of course, your favorite, the ChannelPro events.
Yeah, right.
Of
I
course.
took that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, this is a newer event, the one I'm in Dallas for right now, Right of Boom. And it is entirely education led, with no sales pitches. So that is it's been an interesting way to kind of reframe a lot of the content out here. So this is, I think, their second year of it, but good stuff.
Interesting.
Who
All right.
hosts that? I've heard of that show, but I'm not super familiar with it.
Andrew Morgan runs this, and he also does the cyber call once a week with Wes Spencer and Gary Pica and Phyllis Lee of CIS Security.
All right. Interesting. All right. Question number 4. I'm not sure which direction to go, Rich. We talked about music. We talked about a little bit about Star Wars a second ago. So let me go down that the movie path and see. Yeah, because at least you've seen a movie in your life. I assume you've seen more than one. If you're a movie fan, name one of your favorite movies of all time.
Oh gosh. I'm gonna go with the original Matrix.
Interesting choice. Also one of my favorites as well. Why pick that one?
I just thought it was very well done and so novel when it came out. It kind of changed the way that I think a lot of people looked at things, and kind of spawned some interesting discussions.
It did. It was a very unique story. I remember that was the one thing that I really liked about it, because I've seen a lot of movies, and really there's like, it's the same movies being made over and over again with the same rough stories, just with different twists. And when I saw The Matrix, I was like, I have never seen anything like this in my life, or any kind of story like it either. And I thought it was also pretty cool. So Matrix is a really good choice. You have a particular favorite scene or character from The Matrix?
Probably the subway fight scene, I think was very cool. But yeah.
Nice. Very cool. All right, Rich.
Or the helicopter. That was cool too.
That was cool as well. So okay, question 4C. So you picked the first one. Did you like the other two, or what did you think about the sequels to The Matrix? Oh, I should say 3. There's a newer one now too.
Yeah. So I think they kind of lost some of the magic with it, but still entertaining, and still enjoyed some of the lore that they were able to build out with it. But Yeah, nothing really competes against that first one for me.
I would tend to agree. I did like the second one, at least most certain parts of it. I mean, that highway scene where the trucks smash into each other. I mean, like that was pretty cool. And there were some other really good fight scenes in that one, but I think that they kind of jumped the shark in the third one and it got just out there. Did you see the new one? Did you like the newest one?
I saw it. Yeah, no, it just doesn't not the same.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I agree. Rich, were you a big fan of the Matrix movies? Do you like those?
A huge fan of the first one. We actually talked about this once upon a time because you kind of like the second one. I remember being in a theater watching that, and there were people around me at the end of the movie who were just literally laughing at it. It was so sort of absurd, and I didn't hate it quite that much, but it just didn't come close to measuring up. I like the third one a little bit more than that, but yeah, I think the quality dropped significantly after the first of those movies. I have not seen the newest one.
You're not missing much. I'll just say that. It put a wrapper on it, which I thought was unnecessary. But I don't know. It was mildly. If you like the world, you want to revisit the world. I guess you can get a little bit of value out of it. It wasn't horrible. Henry, would you agree? We're not horrible, right?
Not horrible, but definitely a play on the nostalgia aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, we're almost at question 10, but Rich, go ahead. Question number 5.
So this is kind of one of those classic questions that magazines will ask now and again. Not tech magazines, but other kinds of magazines. What you know that it is your last night on Earth, and you get to pick your last meal on Earth. What is that? The meal you only get one more. What's the thing that you think? I know what it would be.
I'd probably grill myself a nice flank steak with some Stubbs beef marinade for that, and yeah, that would be that and potatoes and broccoli. I'm a simple man.
So why a flank steak? Most people would go like ribeye. Why flank?
It's just if it's cooked right, I think it's more flavorful and yeah, just my cut of meat to go to.
A man who knows his beef. Definitely a good thing to have. Very cool. Very interesting discussion. I'm going to ask a question 5B. What kind of beverage do you pair with that last meal?
Well, probably Angel's Envy Old Fashioned.
I love a good old fashioned. Excellent. Rich knows I like an old fashioned because a lot of times when we go to our shows and we go out to for dinner afterwards, on more than one occasion I've gotten an old fashioned, especially if we go to like a steakhouse, because it's like you're dead on. It's like the perfect pairing. So yeah. Very cool.
Just one.
Just one. Yeah, just one. So cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing that and for playing along. Lots of fun. We're not going to say goodbye quite yet because Rich, I think we've got an In Case You Missed It this week, and you're going to preview what's to come in the weeks ahead.
Yes, indeed. We do have an In Case You Missed It this week. It is written, as always, by our own James Gaskin, catching you up on news you may have missed from the industry, including a new zero-touch provisioning feature from the hyperconverged infrastructure folks at Scale Computing. Trend Micro bought a security operations center vendor this week to beef up its managed detection and response capabilities. And then James is going to tell you a little bit about a software company in India imposing work-life balance on its apparently workaholic employees, and he'll let you know what that looks like. And then looking ahead next week, boy, do you remember a year ago, Matt, when I went to the NerdioCon conference in Cancun and wouldn't shut up about it? Unfortunately for me, I am not going this year, but NerdioCon is happening in Cancun at the very same hotel, in fact, again next week. I have an appointment to speak with some executives over there coming up next week, so I will know more about the news that they're going to be announcing there soon. And then the other big event next week is Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. So I know for a fact, can't talk about this either, but I know for a fact you're going to hear a lot about devices from hardware manufacturers next week.
Yeah, and a lot of really big news now comes out of Mobile World Congress, especially in the phone market. So that'll be interesting to see what they've got coming down the pike. I also know we are having some schedule conflicts, and we may not have an episode next week, if I remember correctly. And then of course, unfortunately, we're going we're going to be at our event in DC. So there may be a couple weeks we don't have a show, but I think we're supposed to do a special edition with Sophos, if I remember correctly. So we might have that in there that we can post. It all depends on how the timing works out on some of these things. So we got a couple things coming up. If we're off for a couple weeks, don't forget we'll be back after that. And anything else, Rich, that I'm missing before we wrap up?
I don't believe so, but come see us in DC.
Yes, come see us in DC. That is definitely the big one. Because then if there's no Channel Pro Weekly, you could at least come and see us in DC and meet us in person and talk to us in person. And wouldn't that be fun? So you don't want to miss that. Big thanks to Henry Timm. He is the president and CEO of Phantom Technology Solutions. Big thanks for coming on and joining us. I hope you had a good time.
Yo, yeah, thanks. Thank you guys for having me. This has been an awesome discussion.
We're glad to have you join us, and hopefully we'll get you on again. But if there's anyone out there that wants to learn more about you, connect with you, talk with you, partner with you, where can they go? How can they find you?
So you can find me, of course, on pretty much every social media. LinkedIn's probably one of the best ways to reach me, but also henrytimm.com.
Simple enough. It's nice when you have your own name as a domain. That's for sure. And with that, we are going to wrap up episode 257. Folks, make sure that you subscribe to the Channel Pro Weekly podcast. Then you don't have to go to the site all the time and wonder. Well, you should go to the site all the time anyway, but you don't have to wonder we have new episodes. We'll just magically appear on your phone or whatever. So we're everywhere podcasts are found. We're in Google, Stitcher, Spotify, all of those, Apple Podcasts. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Leave a rating if you can. Those are always helpful, and a comment as well. If you like to watch on YouTube, it's a long show to watch, but if you do like to watch, you can subscribe there, hit the bell, hit the notifications, make sure you leave a comment there as well. Always good stuff to have you. And of course, go to channelpronetwork.com each and every day. That is where you'll find the latest news, articles, white papers, resources, downloads, all kinds of great information to keep you on top of what's happening in this crazy, crazy, fast-changing industry, and also keep you on top of things that can help you grow your business, make more money, help you with staffing, all kinds of topics that we cover, written by great contributors like Rich and guest contributors all over the industry. So make sure you're going there and follow us on the socials. We're on all of those. And if you have anything you want to tell us, send us an email, podcast@channelpronetwork.com. With that, Rich, I got nothing else to say. You got anything else to say?
I'm all out of stuff to say.
I'm almost out of breath after saying all that stuff. So I think we're going to wrap it up. Folks, we'll see you, if not next week, with a special edition Sophos episode, or we'll see you the week after that. Until then, join us in DC. See you then. Take care.